In this video, I'm going to show a sabbatical year and a jubilee year synchronism in the 15th and 16th years of Hezekiah. The Hebrew name for that is Hezekiah, and the jubilee synchronism is in his 16th year. So we got to gain a little context here. In the 14th year of Hezekiah, Sennacherib invaded Judea, and we see up here the reign of Sargon, and over here the reign of Sennacherib. Now, Sennacherib invaded Judea as crown prince on his third campaign. His first two campaigns are in when he actually reigned, and one may ask the question as to why Sennacherib has one campaign and then the second campaign and then the third campaign as well. He's crown prince under his father Sargon. And the answer is that the Assyrian defeat was so horrible in the 14th year of Hezekiah that the Assyrians rearranged their chronology in order to cover it up. As a result of this cover-up, scholars assume that the invasion of Judea was in 701 BC, and they rearrange the biblical chronology according to the Assyrian version of events. But the Assyrian version of events is not the correct version of events. The biblical version of events is the correct version of events. Sennacherib invaded in the 14th year of Hezekiah, and in the 15th year was a sabbatical year, and the 16th year was a jubilee year. So we're going to see now that this is the case. At the time of the invasion, Hezekiah's life was extended by 15 years. And so we see that that goes from his 14th year to the end of his reign at 29 years. And then his son Manasseh begins to reign. And Manasseh reigned for 55 years. We see the end of Manasseh's reign here, and his son Amon, who reigned for 2 years. And then we reach Josiah's reign, and Josiah reigned for 31 years. And here's the 31st year of Josiah, and his death corresponds to a date in 609 BC. Which scholars agree upon because the Neo-Babylonian chronology cannot be denied at this point. Scholars generally agree on this reign transition also between Manasseh to Amon to Josiah, but when they get to the reign of Manasseh and Hezekiah, it is at this point that they want to rearrange biblical chronology to make it agree with the Assyrian version of events. So what they want to do is they want to make a 10-year overlap between the reign of Manasseh and Hezekiah in order to move the 14th year of Hezekiah down to 701 BC. And we see how many steps are necessary to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If we go 10 steps, we come down to 701 BC up here. So the reason for the artificial co-regency of 10 years between Hezekiah and Manasseh is solely motivated by the assumption that Sennacherib's third campaign was in 701 BC. But the Assyrian version of events is a lie. The biblical version of events is correct. And we also saw that from the 65 years of Isaiah 7:8 that it's impossible for there to be a co-regency here, because then that would turn Isaiah 7:8 and the 65 years into a lie. So we see that Hezekiah's 14th year was actually in the BC year 711, looking up here. So this must be when Sennacherib's third campaign occurred. Sennacherib just renumbered them, and he moved his defeat. In fact, he never speaks of his defeat in his annals of the third campaign. He only speaks of the initial successful part of it. The defeat is completely erased from the Assyrian version of events. All right. Now that we've got Hezekiah's 14th, 15th, and 16th years located in the right place in history, let's see why they were a sabbatical year and a jubilee year. In Isaiah chapter 37, Isaiah gives us the history repeated from the book of Kings. In Isaiah 37, he mentions the 14th year of Hezekiah back in chapter 36, and the attack on Jerusalem, or the siege of Jerusalem, and then he prays to the Almighty for deliverance, and this is the answer the Almighty gives to him, a sign of his deliverance. And this year shall be a sign unto thee. Ye shall eat this year such as groweth of itself, and the second year that which springeth of the same, And in the 3rd year, sow and reap, and plant vineyards, and eat their fruit. So in verse 30, we have the sign of chapter 37 here. And the sign consists in allusion to sabbatical and jubilee year language. If we look back in the Torah, in Leviticus 25, it says, "That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vineyard. It is a year of rest unto the land." So we see that there's a direct allusion to the sabbatical and jubilee year in which they're not allowed to reap the harvest, a commercial harvest of the land. They're only allowed to eat what grows of itself for their own personal use. I want to make some comments about the Hebrew text of Isaiah 37:30. "And this shall be to you a sign. You shall eat this year," but it says the year. So let's correct that. The year, Hashanah, Sapiach, such as grows of itself. We could translate this aftergrowth or more literally spillings. But I will just translate it aftergrowth to bring it into harmony with the other usages. I put the definite article in here, Uvashana, and also I put the word in here, which was omitted. The second, Sachis, aftergrowth. This word's a hapax word, which means it only occurs in this text and its clone text from Kings here. What it appears to have happened here is that a synonymous word having the same meaning has been coined to sound like the original word. So we see that samek has been replaced by a shin, and that the chet, and that these two letters have changed places, and that the pei has converted itself to a samek, having a similar shape. If it were closed up too much or drawn kind of funny, it would look like the same letter. So these two letters changed places, and then this letter transmuted it to the last letter, or something like this has happened to make a sound-alike word. We see that the first word means spillings or outpouring, sapiach, and is used in Leviticus 25:5 in regard to the sabbatical year. 8, sapiach, direct object marker, so you would translate it the aftergrowth. And then in Leviticus 25:11 regarding the Jubilee, et sapichecha. So the word is used there, and then it's used in the sister text to Isaiah 37:30. Used in Job 14:19 and used in Isaiah 37:30, the aftergrowth, Hashanah Sapiach. Looking at the second word, Sachis, we see it's used only in the two texts, 2 Kings 19:29 and Isaiah 37:30. Scholars have concluded that the meanings of the two words are equal. Sapiach, which has the known meaning, and Sachis, which has a sound-alike meaning. Notice in Leviticus 25:5 it says, 8 sapiach in the construct of your harvest, but it has an 8th in front of it, which makes it definite, and your harvest is also definite because of the pronoun. So this is a way of making a construct noun definite. Put the word 8 on it instead of the definite article. 8 sapiach, the aftergrowth of your harvest. It's a way of getting around construct nouns cannot be definite rule. So you don't use a definite article, you use the word 8. We see here, mistranslated, 8 again, the definite direct object marker, 8 sapichecha. So we see this is also a way of making it definite. Only in this case, it's a direct object of the verb. Nor you shall reap. So reaping the aftergrowth is prohibited, but it may be harvested for one's own use. It cannot be harvested for commercial use. So it appears that the definite article here is not because this word means this year, but it means the year of the aftergrowth, this being definite too. This is equivalent to et shana, or to put it the other way, et sapiach Hashanah, the aftergrowth of the year. So we could just turn these two words around and put et on this one. The idea is that it's definite. And also we have the same thing over here. We have the year, the second, in this case, or the second is an adjective. So we have this in the second year, adjective modifying, this adjective modifying year. And then we have aftergrowth again, but this is definite. So it's as if it had said et sachis. So by these clues, we can see that the text is more definitely connecting itself to our two Leviticus passages concerning the sabbatical and the Jubilee year. It's really, really hard to miss in the Hebrew. We see in Ussher's Annals of the World here that he acknowledges the language speaks of a sabbatical year and Jubilee year. We see that William Whiston, in his notes on his translation of Josephus, acknowledges in the footnote that Isaiah 37:30 speaks of a sabbatical year and a jubilee after it. We also see here that Floyd Jones acknowledges that Isaiah 37:30 and 2 Kings 19:29 are in conjunction with a sabbatical and jubilee year. All right, concerning the Isaiah text, I want to remind the reader that all things are in parables, and the scripture gives us a parable or an allusion to sabbatical and the Jubilee year. If we hold that the scripture teaches that Messiah would die and then rise again on the third day, then we have to acknowledge this principle of literary allusion to chronological matters in the scripture, because it is not plainly stated that the texts or the prophecies that refer to the third day refer to Messiah. This has to be gained by paying attention to the literary allusions in the text and the repeated pattern of the allusions. We have the same phenomenon here of embedding chronological material into the text in the form of a riddle or an allusion to be figured out. This is a literary device of the Hebrew scriptures. So we should not dismiss that the sign that Isaiah was talking about refers to a sabbatical and a jubilee year. And in fact, the sign does refer to what they did do in a sabbatical and a jubilee year. They did eat the aftergrowth for their own personal use, but they did not reap it for harvest. So the sign predicts what they would be doing for 2 years. This can be none other than a sabbatical and a jubilee year. Okay, we can see that Floyd Jones was approximately correct in mentioning 709 BC. We see that the sabbatical year began in 711 BC at the end of Hezekiah's 14th year, and that the jubilee year began in the fall of 710 BC, and that it ended in 709 BC. Here's Hezekiah's 14th year in Volume 1 of the Scroll of Biblical Chronology and Ancient Near Eastern History. And I have here the operations of Sennacherib and the invasion in the 14th year here. This corresponds to 711 BC, and then we see the subsequent sabbatical and jubilee year here, the jubilee year being 710 to 709 BC. And we have a cross-reference to the key scripture here. We have another Jubilee allusion in Isaiah 27:13, the fall of Nineveh in 612 BC. The great trumpet is blown on the eve of the year of Jubilee to announce the Jubilee. This gold square here, this gold rectangle is the year of Jubilee. Then we have between 570 the fall of 570 and the fall of 563 BC, we have Nebuchadnezzar's 7 years of madness, which is followed by a year of Jubilee. And he says that at the end of the 7 years of madness, at the end of days, his kingdom was restored unto him. So again, we have another Jubilee allusion here, and that the kingdom is restored to Messiah in the final Jubilee also, as the second coming will be at the great trumpet, which is sounded in the year of Jubilee, also known as the last trumpet. And we see that the Jubilee coincides with the last year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, the 43rd year of his reign, right there. All right, here's another Jubilee allusion. The scripture says that Saul was the son of a year in his reigning, which means he reigned 1 year, and to be the son of a year means to be in the second year. Then it says he caused the trumpet to sound throughout all the land. This is the Jubilee trumpet. This echoes or alludes to the language of the Jubilee trumpet in Leviticus 25. And when David finally succeeded in moving the ark to Jerusalem, we have another probable Jubilee text in 2 Samuel 6:15. This is a little more obscure because you have to pay close attention to the Hebrew in order to get it. We see here the Jubilee in Hezekiah's 16th year, and we see that it ends in the fall of 709. So on our calculator here, we'll take 709, and we're going to add to it 8 Jubilees. Although the Jubilee is in the 50th year, the 50th year is also the first year of the next cycle. So the distance from Jubilee to Jubilee is 49 years. So we take the base year for the ending of a Jubilee in 709 BC, and we add 49 times 8 to add 8 Jubilees. And the result is the base year of the Jubilee that was 8 Jubilees before that, 1101 BC. Let's look it up. There it is. The Jubilee ends in 1101 BC, which is the second year of Saul, when Saul had reigned the son of a year, yea, 2 years he hath reigned. This result is exactly spot on when we get the 390 years of the divided kingdom correct. And then we tack on Solomon's reign to that, and David's reign to that, and Saul's reign to that. Each of those 3 reigns were 40 years. Then we come to the second year of Saul. We see that Jubilee synchronizes with the Jubilee in Hezekiah's 16th year. The era counted from the divided kingdom, 390 years, comes to an end in 593 BC in the Ezekiel passage. We go back 30 years, and we come to the 18th year of Josiah. Counting back 18, 2 years for Amon, 55 years for Manasseh, inclusive account for the Manasseh to Hezekiah transition. And then we come back the 16th year of Hezekiah, and we end up with the Jubilee for a perfect fit. And not only that, but all the data in between fits perfectly.